Hello and good evening. We are coming to you live from Rwanda's capital here in Kigali. Many thanks for joining us on tonight's RwandaTV News. I'm Ethan Tashobia. These are the top stories for our viewers in Rwanda and across the world. This Monday afternoon, President Paul Kagame arrived in Brazzaville, the Republic of Congo, for a 3-day state visit. Upon arrival, he was welcomed by his counterpart, President Sassou Nguesso, before addressing a joint session of the Congolese Parliament earlier this afternoon. Rwanda Land Management and Use Authority emphasizes that reinforcing the country's local committees in charge of land will help accurate and up-to-date records of plots and how they are being used. The government of Rwanda has asked diplomatic corps accredited in the country to play their part in fighting genocide denial in their respective countries. Many thanks indeed for joining us for tonight's broadcast. I'm Ethan Tashobia. President Paul Kagame on Monday arrived in Brazzaville, the Republic of Congo, for a 3-day state visit. Upon arrival, he was welcomed by his host, President Sassou Nguesso. This afternoon, President Paul Kagame addressed a joint session of the Congolese Parliament and urged legislators to take actions towards achieving continental prosperity. We have this report. This Monday afternoon, President Paul Kagame arrived in Brazzaville, the Republic of Congo, for a 3-day state visit. Upon arrival, he was welcomed by his host and counterpart, President Sassou Nguesso of the Republic of Congo. Later on, the president addressed a joint session of the Congolese Parliament and was hosted to a state banquet by President Sassou Nguesso. In his remarks to the Parliament, President Kagame pointed out that his visit to the Republic of Congo is an opportunity to deepen the friendship between Rwanda and Congo and strengthen cooperation for the benefits of the citizens of both countries. President Kagame told the Congolese Parliament that the people of Rwanda and the people of the Republic of Congo are united by a common vision of a stable and prosperous region. President Kagame also urged parliamentarians to take action towards achieving a strong and thriving continent. The head of state also told Congolese legislators that as Rwanda marks the 28th commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi, this is a time for Rwandans to remember and also recommit to strengthening their national unity. President Kagame noted that there are conflicts on the African continent that have lasted decades, and there is no explanation for that other than leaders not doing what they know is right. He urged the audience that it is high time to do better to ensure Africa achieves desired integration and unity. On the second day of the state visit, the two heads of state will hold a tete-a-tete followed by a bilateral meeting alongside their respective delegations. Following the bilateral talks, representatives from both delegations will sign bilateral agreements in the sectors of economic partnerships for the promotion and protection of the investments, mining, SMEs and handcrafts, culture and arts, as well as youth, sports and civic education. President Kagame, accompanied by his host President Sassou Nguesso, will also visit a milk factory in Oyo Town, located in Cuvette region, more than 400 kilometers from the capital, Brazzaville. In other stories, officials at Rwanda Land Management and Use Authority have noted that reinforcing the country's local committees in charge of land will help keep accurate and up-to-date records of plots and how they're being used, avoiding disputes at the local level and ensuring that policies are respected and implemented. Sejanori has this report.
Sector offices around the country are always busy with land-related matters, and it is not uncommon to find disgruntled local residents. I began the process of updating my land deed with the intention of splitting the plot with the people I sold part of it to. But every time I go to the district offices, they keep telling me to go and get the people who bought the plots. Yet they do not live anywhere near here. One of them is in Changugu. I want them to consider alternatives instead of telling me to fetch people I have no means of getting. Local committees in charge of land exist to deal with these and other matters, only sending them to the district and the Rwanda Land and Management Authority when they are unable to resolve the matter. All plots were registered, but there are always exceptions, and that is when those land committees step in to assist, providing the necessary paperwork to smooth things out. There is also the matter of disputes, and you know that they are always present in general, so land is not an exception. The committees also play an important role in helping authorities to resolve them. The most recent cabinet meeting approved a ministerial decree increasing the responsibilities of the committees, supplementing the ones they were charged with in the land law introduced in June last year. Officials at the Rwanda Land Management and Use Authority have noted that reinforcing the country's local committees in charge of land will help keep accurate and up-to-date records of plots and how they are being used, avoiding disputes at the local level and ensuring that policies are respected and implemented. The cabinet resolutions also included the confirmation of the master plan for land in all districts of the country, meaning all plots should be used for what they were designated for.
The government of Rwanda has asked diplomatic corps in the country to play their part in fighting denied ideologies as well as negation and denial of the genocide that was perpetrated against the Tutsi. The call was made as diplomats met with officials from Rwanda's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, as well as the Minister of National Unity and Civic Engagement. We have this report.
In the years since the end of the 1994 genocide that was perpetrated against the Tutsi here in Rwanda, the international community has worked to acknowledge its role in the atrocities that were committed and avoid repeating the mistakes that were made when nothing was done to prevent them, despite the numerous warning signs that were evident in the build-up to the fastest genocide in recorded human history.
Muri 1999 mbyibutse umuryango w'abibumbye washyizeho komisiyo.
Let me remind you that in 1999, the UN formed a commission that examined the mistakes that were made, and it was concluded that the UN ignored the evidence it had been given that the government of Rwanda and its army were preparing a genocide. The Belgian Senate also prepared a similar report in 1997, and their Prime Minister came here in the year 2000 and asked for forgiveness. The AU also carried out its research that year, and even the ambassadors that participated in the discussions here admitted that there were blatant incidents of evidence being ignored and not being followed up on. Every year we will hold meetings like this to look at the lessons that were learned and also plan for the future, using the lessons of 1994 to prevent similar things from happening elsewhere in the world, like what we endured here in Rwanda. There is also the matter of other countries putting in place laws to deal with genocidal ideologies and the denial and negation of the genocide against the Tutsi. Certain international treaties have been signed, for example the UN Security Council resolution of 2014 that calls for all countries part of the UN to make sure that genocide perpetrators are brought to justice, for countries without laws punishing the crime of genocide to make sure that they are put in place, and that cooperation is pursued in the prosecution of those who deny and negate the genocide against the Tutsi, that such laws also be instilled. They don't have to be specific to the genocide against the Tutsi, as long as they cover all internationally recognized genocides. They have such a law in France, in Belgium too, though we feel that the one in Belgium should be amended. In Luxembourg, Switzerland and Italy, they have them as well. So progress has been made, and if things continue like that, we believe that the problems highlighted will be addressed. France's ambassador in Rwanda has called for all who fail to prevent the genocide against the Tutsi from happening to learn from their mistakes and bring genocide perpetrators to justice.
It's clear that France and the international community, but France first, allowed a genocide that was preventable to happen, but that genocide had not been planified by French people, but by Rwandans, part of whom were prosecuted in Arusha, others in France now, and others still live in France, and they don't have any problem, and they're not being prosecuted in some countries as well. But let me say this: France was long involved in denying the genocide and the France's responsibility. And its position was not really, could not go on. became obvious that France could not go on in that denial. We all know what happened here.
Speaking on behalf of his counterparts, Angola's ambassador in Rwanda noted that the world has the responsibility of fighting genocide ideologies so that such atrocities are never allowed to happen again anywhere. He also commended Rwandans for the developmental progress they have made, built upon unity and reconciliation, and called for the international community to continue supporting the country in its efforts.
Now, genocide survivors in their sector have criticized the UN soldiers who abandoned and left them to face their fate during the genocide against the Tutsi that was raging in the country back in 1994. Commemoration activities were held at Keres Ndera Genocide Memorial, where the bodies of more than 15,000 Tutsis were buried. Worth were also laid at the graves of more than 500 victims buried at the Petit Seminary Memorial, also in Ndera.
Umurenge wa Ndera ubundi ni ahantu habaye jenoside twita ndengakamere.
The atrocities that were committed in Ndera sector were beyond understanding because unlike other areas where people were killed out in the open, the massacres here were largely concentrated in places that belonged to the clergy. On the 11th, Belgian commandos came and evacuated the white nuns and priests that were here. They came and left multitudes that had fled into Karaes despite being well armed. They could have done something to help, but they did nothing. They just took their people and things, even their dogs. After the Interahamwe militia realized that the white people had gone, they called for backup from the soldiers based at Kanombe, and they came and started shooting, using powerful weapons. They were finally able to force the people out of the compound because before that they had been unable to, as we tried to defend ourselves. In the face of such guns, however, there was little we could do. They then lobbed grenades into the group, and then the Interahamwe would move in to finish them off with their traditional weapons. They chose to take their people, their belongings and their dogs, but could not take even one of the 5,000 people that had fled here. It was a very cowardly act and made us wonder if they played a role in the planning of the genocide.
Also, still on the commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, a commemoration event was today held at Nyanza Chichuchiro in memory of the Tutsis killed at Nyanza Hill. Now, in April 11th, 1994, over 3,000 Tutsis were slain at Nyanza Hill in Chichuchiro by Interahamwe killers after being abandoned by a belligerent contingent within the UN peacekeepers at Eto Chichuchiro. During the commemoration ceremony, the Speaker of Parliament, Honorable Nolantil Mukabarisa, called on young people to reject genocide deniers and also genocide ideologies rather, and also those who negate and deny the genocide that was perpetrated against the Tutsi back in 1994. The Speaker made the call during the commemoration ceremony. Honorable Mukabarisa noted that what happened in Rwanda that year, particularly the Tutsis that were left to die at what used to be at Eto Chichuchiro, will forever be a stain on the image of the international community and the peacekeeping missions. The Genocide Memorial Site at Nyanza Chichuchiro is the final resting place of more than 96,000 Tutsis that were killed during the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994. Of them, 3,000 were killed on April 11th, 1994. Rwandans living in Denmark and the Friends of Rwanda have held a commemoration activity to mark 28 years since the genocide against the Tutsi was perpetrated here in Rwanda back in 1994. Those who spoke at the occasion included the Danish parliamentarian Sakenda Sadiq, who showed how speeches made by people like Leo Mugesera in 1992 and others in the years and decades before the actual genocide began were building up to the tragic event that had been planned well, that rather actually shows that the genocide was well planned before it actually began. Genocide survivors were also given the opportunity to share their testimonies. From me and the entire news production team, many thanks for your company tonight. We wish you continued strength and hope during this period as we commemorate the victims of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. I'm Ethan Tashabia. Bye for now.